I've come to realise over time that despite Apple's best efforts, there's no such thing as a Mac that's perfect for everyone. Some of Apple's computers are just better suited to very specific tasks. I'm not just talking about the Macs Apple sells brand new right now though. Sometimes you can get a truly better experience using a much older machine. Here's an example. I wanted to re-watch Mad Max Fury Road recently, and my 13-inch MacBook Air screen just wasn't able to really do the film justice. I don't have a desktop or TV setup at home right now, but I realised I could use the 17-inch 2010 MacBook Pro I bought a while back for just $170. The display on that laptop was truly incredible for its time. The resolution of 1920 by 1200 on an anti-glare matte display is more akin to something you'd find on a desktop monitor these days. My 2010 17-inch MacBook runs macOS Catalina, which isn't natively supported on the machine, but can be patched using DOS-Dude 1's patcher. The 2010 MacBook Pros were only given support up to 2016's macOS Sierra by Apple, so Catalina, which came in 2019, maintains reasonably modern features while not taxing the 14-year-old laptop too hard on performance. Bear in mind, Apple stopped building 17-inch Macs in 2012, and there hasn't been one of that size released since. Yeah, current MacBooks do have up to 16-inch displays, but not only is that extra inch fairly significant, but the newer MacBooks have that notch too, which can be distracting when viewing content presented in narrower aspect ratios. So yeah, believe it or not, my favourite MacBook just for film viewing, by a long shot, is the 17-inch line of MacBook Pros, some of which can be found for under $200 with a bit of luck on eBay or other used tech sites. Why pay $2,000 for a 16-inch MacBook when this 17-inch one even has a DVD player built in? For our next oddly useful Mac, we're going to go quite a bit further back in Apple's history. The PowerBook G4 line, in my opinion, comprises some of the best writing computers anyone could ever ask for. The one I have is a 2005 model, specifically the PowerBook G4 12-inch. There are several reasons I love typing my scripts and diaries on this thing, but first and foremost is the delightful keyboard. Some of the first Intel MacBook Pros contained keyboards like this until 2008. It has an edge-to-edge design with no pronounced gaps between the keys like on newer Apple boards, but each key is sloped on its edges so you can feel your way around the board effortlessly. The aesthetic of these metallic-looking plastic keys matches that of the case the keyboard is attached to. Apple in their peak aluminium era. The PowerBook G4 line, although markedly small for the time, wasn't anywhere near the space-saving designs that came from Apple following the release of the MacBook Air. Because of this, the keys have a comfortable level of travel, and the keyboard backlight is just about right so that no light escapes from around or beneath the keys. I've owned dedicated keyboards made by Apple, newer MacBooks, and even mechanical keyboards with switches to my choosing, and I'd still prefer to type on the PowerBook G4's keyboard given the option today. Yeah, there are some limitations which send blows in the direction of these old machines. The OS is so old that support on the internet is very poor. You won't be able to use the latest version of Word, and even if it could be installed, the PowerBook G4's single-core PowerPC processor would struggle to run such new apps. I don't find this such a deal-breaker though. USB drives will work fine on these laptops, so once you've written up the document on the PowerBook, you can just transfer it to whatever computer you need to upload or view it from later with a USB stick or hard drive. There's a real joy in being able to write without the distractions of a modern operating system plaguing your every keystroke sometimes. Next up is what I'd consider the ultimate gaming Mac. No, seriously, hear me out. It's from 2010, but is the computer I use to play all sorts of modern games from Red Dead 2 to Minecraft. I'm talking, of course, about the Mac Pro 5,1. Sold from 2010 to 2012, the 5,1 has had possibly the most extraordinary lifetime of any Apple Mac so far. It's incredibly modular, with the CPUs, GPUs, RAM, storage drives, Wi-Fi card and more super easy to remove and upgrade. Yep, I said CPUs. This machine can run dual Intel Xeon processors for a maximum of 12 cores with a 3.7 GHz clock speed. These days, that's a pretty reasonable build for a desktop computer, but imagine the insanity of owning one over a decade ago. Thanks to the regular PCIe ports that the Mac Pro 5.1 uses, I've been able to put a Radeon RX 6600 XT inside my machine, which is a fairly decent graphics card for 2024. The maximum DDR3 RAM on board is 128GB, but I've stuck to just 48GB as I can't feasibly see myself needing more. This runs at 1333 MHz, which is obviously pretty slow for modern computing, but I would wager it's not damaging my performance too much overall. I'm able to run most games on high graphics settings at 1440p. Recent Far Cry games 5 and 6 run great at the second highest preset. Fortnite is absolutely playable at 1440p too. I'm running performance mode here as I like to keep my FPS towards 90 where possible. Red Dead Redemption 2 and Cyberpunk 2077 were two games that certainly tested my Mac Pro's abilities in GPU, RAM and CPU performance, but I'm happy to say they're still running fine at medium settings on my 1440p display. The Mac Pro 5.1 is a really strange machine if I'm honest. For those on a tight budget, better performance per dollar might not even exist past this Mac. OS support is very patchy and you'll need to buy a Mac Flash GPU if you want really good performance in both Windows and Mac OS. It's worth considering in specific use cases though. For a while, I was able to edit my videos on my Mac OS partition in the Mac Pro 5.1, while gaming in my free time on the Windows installation I had on the same machine. Oh, that's right, I didn't mention storage yet. There are 6 SATA 2 connections which can hold SSD or HDD storage drives, while PCIe drives can be used too in the slots that don't contain your graphics card. I boot macOS Monterey off a 500GB PCIe drive with Windows 10 booted off a SATA SSD. I've got a 4TB drive which I back games and original copies of my videos to as well. So the Mac Pro 5.1 is probably the most modular and versatile Mac the world will ever see. I'm reluctant to let mine go, but I don't play too many games anymore, and I do prefer the faster performance of M1 on my MacBook Air to edit videos on. Someday soon it'll have to go, but for now it's my gaming and Mac enthusiast machine, I guess. Time for a couple of other Macs with unique use cases. The 2015-17 12-inch Retina MacBook line is unique in being the smallest Apple ever released. It's hard to describe such a tiny machine without giving you one to try, but think iPad Pro size, or even older iPad Airs I guess. Seriously, it's like holding an iPad except you have a full keyboard and trackpad built in, and of course a proper macOS version. These tiny laptops were held back slightly by their ill-performing Intel M series chips, but if you just need a super light machine for writing emails on the go, you might want to consider picking one up used, since it's a hell of a lot lighter and cheaper than modern MacBook Airs are. Alright, so today's video was a bit different, I suppose. I wouldn't recommend you buy all of these random machines I just mentioned. Some of them are close to useless unless you have that one specific reason for owning one. I just think it's pretty important to outline how some of these supposedly old Macs retain some of their most unique values to this day. There are a lot of problems that walking into an Apple store and buying a new Mac just won't solve. Thank you very much for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this weekly, and if you really enjoy my content, perhaps you'd consider becoming a Patreon member from $3 a month to help support my work further. Big thank you goes out to my current patrons, of course, Adrian, Oliver Wilderman, Penny, and Kinda Average Tech.